Hey everybody, Portland Chess Shop here to bring you the chess action, and we're going to be looking at some Nakamura games. Basically what happened is I went to go play some high-stakes poker downtown tonight, and I got crushed. Tonight was not a winning night for me, and I'm still up. I'm still a winning player. I keep a log of all my games in an Excel spreadsheet, so I'm still kicking ass as a poker player, but today is not a winning night, so I have a little bit of extra time, came home, and wanted to make a chess video for y'all. So I was thinking, well, there's not really anybody logged on right now that's any good. I know that you guys like to watch good players, so I had a kind of a creative idea. Why don't we look at Hikaru Nakamura's history? These are the past games that he played, the past 20 games. It looks like he played a bunch of 5-minute on May 30th, like 2 days ago. So too bad I missed it live, but we'll be able to go over his games. So we do see the ratings of the players. They're all 5-minute games. There's some openings, dates, as well as we do have a spoiler alert of the results of the games. But let's just jump through and try to run through maybe all 20 of these games really quickly to see exactly what Nakamura did. So, and I know that you guys, have said that you like to see the analysis post game with Crafty. So that's sort of how I came up with the idea. Thought that you might appreciate this type of video. So Nakamura often plays untraditional openings in his 5-minute game. I think this is partially because he doesn't want to give away his opening theory that he plays in tournaments. So he plays a little bit offline, but he's also good at playing this sort of way too. I know he plays this way a little bit in tournaments, but I'm pretty sure he plays king pawn and queen pawn in real matches. So look at this. What is this? He's playing someone who's over 2,000 rated, and somehow he won a pawn already. This is like totally ridiculous, right? So his opponent castles, and he plays here, and after bishop here, he'll be able to play like h4, h5, and do that sort of stuff. And his opponent basically just blunders. But it's also because Nakamura has only spent 4 seconds so far for his first 5 moves. But that's still kind of ridiculous. So Nakamura starts an attack on the black king, having not developed. I would, maybe develop one of my knights, but Nakamura doesn't even need to. The knights actually are pretty good at defending in their central squares. They do defend some key squares. So this knight comes forward. He brings this knight back, and now he plays pawn up. You can see that white is way ahead in this position already. Knight takes, and he plays pawn takes. Nakamura is good at finding these sorts of tactics whenever necessary. Now if the king takes, then the queen takes the bishop, as we see. So king comes down, and then Nakamura is willing to trade with his gargantuan material advantage. So he's able to do different things. He's versatile. He's able to attack when necessary and defend when necessary. Look at this move. This move is pretty sick. He plays f4. So you see Nakamura is playing pretty fast, and it's defending the knight, and he's threatening checkmate right here. So this game, as you can see, is pretty much over like really early on. He gives away these pawns, but he's going for the kill, I guess. What? Nakamura gives away like tons of his advantage. So pawn takes, pawn takes. He's still he can't play pawn takes here. He has to play knight check, king e5, and then takes check. King takes, knight takes f8. Sure, that makes sense. So somehow Nakamura misses this. He might have been really cocky. I don't know. He's still winning pretty significantly. Now he's up +3 again. So there is, like in poker, there's variance, right? So tonight I played pretty well in poker, I think, even though I had a huge losing session. I had a hand where I had pocket tens, and this guy who plays tons of hands called me, and then called my flop bet. I had an overpair on the flop, and a king came out on the turn. And I knew that the king was a little bit bad because he could have a king. But what's he calling with on the flop that has a king in his hand? Not very many hands. So I was thinking that the king isn't too much. So I shoved all in. He called. He shows king 5, meaning that he had nothing basically pre-flop or on the flop, but made his hand on the turn. So that's one way that I lost a hand tonight, and that had something to do with the Nakamura game, in that there's a lot of variance in his games. Like but it's not like people play perfectly in chess. Like people play and they don't understand all the implications of all their moves. And in that sense, chess is stochastic, meaning that like there's a random element to it, just like in chess. So even though chess is a game of skill, because like both players get the same opening pieces, there's still this element of gambling, I think, and that's why there's a lot of players who are like to play chess for money, things like that, like to have other risk-taking hobbies that are also chess players. Anyway, so let's jump through this. So it looks like some more mistakes are made a little bit, but they're not huge mistakes. So this should be really pretty easy. Look, he's only up +1 now. Look at all the mistakes in this game. D4 is apparently much better. But this bishop is pretty much, I was going to say, like, what's the worst word that's... this bishop is fatter than Jabba the Hutt. I don't know. I don't know how to be PC about it. This is kind of a stupid game. Knight comes back. He's way ahead with the knight. Now he's won a pawn, and we're at the end of that game. Okay, let's jump to the next one. Okay, so Nakamura again, and we're going to have analysis again, which helps guide us through the positions, telling us exactly, where each player goes wrong, goes right. So, about equal. H5 is, I don't know, I like playing for the center. This guy is a grandmaster, though, 2,500. So this is actually a pretty close match between the two players. Nakamura used to be like 28, 2,900. Let's actually look at his profile real quick. So 1 minute is a variant of chess for people like Naka. For the rest of us, it is a video game. Hikaru Nakamura. So in 5 minutes, his record right now is 26, but his record is 29.55. So you can actually see that Nakamura, and that was in April of last year. You can see a lot of these records are from last year. I think he was playing better last year than this year, but he still plays fine. At the 1 minute. I think he's been working on his longer chess. So I want to see some more elements of variance so I can tell you about my next poker hand. You guys have kind of noticed that I play a lot of games. I play, StarCraft and chess and Magic and poker and Pac-Man. I have the record at Pac-Man as of today at the local this place called the Rialto downtown. So I took down the record with 91,000. Pretty sick. 2 checks are played. So but it looks like white is ahead in this position. Let's jump back for a second. I hope you guys like me my digressions. So G4 is apparently the best move, and black is ahead here after queenside castles, and you can just see that black has some pressure. His knights are pretty active. This bishop is pretty active. So queenside castle does look like a reasonable move. So here's 2 checks, and then he gets a discovered check, meaning that the knight moves and the queen is actually the one that's checking. But it's not a brutal discovered check, and that's why white's ahead here. Nakamura does play f4, which takes some courage, but it's also cool. That's another thing about chess that it's a little bit like poker, is that you have to have some courage to play moves that are sharp, that are tactical, that might give you a big advantage, but might have a downfall. You can't just like always play, Kramnik does try to always play solid, but you have to take sometimes gargantuan risks in this game. So now it's equal. Let's see. So here it looks like knight c4, at least according to the computer, is the best move. I wonder if it's because the queen has a few squares left. So after knight c4, you can play things like a4 and b4 to try to play b5, trapping the queen and attacking the knight simultaneously. So that's kind of an interesting idea that it looks like Nakamura didn't see. So here Nakamura plays his queen up. Kind of interesting. If the queen's traded, the knight comes forward, and then the knight's not attacked. But then he can defend, but the queen moves instead. Bishop here makes some sense to me. Knight comes forward, and he just decides to exchange. Knight retreats. Bishop comes back, and looks like white has a small advantage. White has a little bit of a bigger advantage here. Knight e1. This is like to blockade this pawn, because this pawn, is threatening, as well as if the knight comes to f3, it can attack h4. So there's an exchange. Knight here. We see that white is better. Attacks the rook. Knight takes, and now white is much better apparently. So where was the mistake there? So here he has to actually play rook h8, attacking the bishop to gain back the tempo. But that's kind of an unusual circumstance, maybe. So takes, check. Bishop takes. Now he's going to have this sick, it looks like knight e6 check is a tactic, after which the bishop's going to fall. The king has very few squares, you see. Check, the king can't go to either of these squares, it has to come to this line. Then you can take here with check. He does play it, check. If the king takes, then isn't this mate? Yeah, this is checkmate. So that's how Nakamura takes down that game. Alright, let's go to the next one. Oh, did we lose his history? I think I might have just closed it. Excuse me. So in case you didn't know, that's how you look at someone's history, /history, and then their name. So we'll look at the third game. Here it is. So Nakamura is black this time, and we will jump forward with it. So Nakamura playing again this hyper-modern setup. He's a tactical player, but he likes to use a hyper-modern strategy, meaning that he sort of controls squares on the sides and attacks the center from the sides, and just lets his opponent take space and then tries to counterattack. So we see b5 is played. You see both the bishops are fianchettoed, so that's perfect example of a hyper-modern strategy. He's got a lot of space on this side, for example, and this side is still doesn't have many weaknesses. It's safe for castling eventually. So here, let's turn on the computer. So white is better in this position. You see Nakamura's playing against an international master. Knight's attacked, the knight comes back. That's maybe a little bit questionable. It looks like white was better before that. Now there's takes here, and takes. Black is still in the game. He's down by a bit. We should probably watch the time too. You see that Nakamura is playing really fast. That's going to be pretty much standard for him. Knight comes forward. He's got this sort of turtle defense. Pawn up. Bishop's going to have to move. The bishop goes back that way. And now black is actually a little bit better in this position. So g5 here, castles. h4 is played, trying to make some weaknesses, but it doesn't look like it's exactly going to work. g4 is played, and the knight retreats. The pawn goes up. So now there's some serious weaknesses in this base, but at the same time, this is pretty firmly protected, and this knight is basically terrible. The knight's going to have to use like at least 2 turns to come back into the game. So black is up a piece in a sense, because this knight is doing nothing for at least the moment. So bishop comes out, knight comes out, and knight comes forward, knight comes out, bishop comes back. Actually, black is much better in this position now. I wonder how that happened. So let's kind of retreat for a second. So here, black is slightly better. Actually, queen g5 is pretty good. So white's actually slightly better. So here and now, knight f5 is the best move. I just don't totally understand how knight f5 can be that good of a move. But it is. It looks like white is going on the wrong plan. And knight retreats. Look at this funny position. It's because the d4 pawn is going to fall. I sort of noticed that a little bit earlier. It looks like that's one of the main reasons that this position is good for black. So the bishop decides to retreat again. The knight comes forward. Pawn comes up. And now there's a bishop takes b2 shot over here. See if he decides to play that. That looks incredibly dangerous. Yeah, bishop h6 makes more sense to me. Pinning the knight. Decides to play c4 instead. There's a check, after which the king moves. Rook comes over, and the computer only saw it after a second. It sees that, queen d7 is apparently a very good move. This position is, I would say, pretty complicated. So that's interesting. But you see that this knight is basically out of the game. And I think that black is up a couple pawns. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So black's up 1 pawn, but he's kind of up 2 because this pawn is like, these pawns are terrible, and this knight is also terrible as well, and that's what has to do with this score here. So the queen comes, the knight takes, pawn up. You see that this is a pawn chain. It seems pretty strong. Knight retreats, pawn up again. After which the knight comes forward, which seems like a good move. We do see that Nakamura is playing very fast. He still has over 4 minutes, while his opponent has under 2 minutes. So that's definitely related to this position. And Nakamura is playing fast and well, which is what he does best. So e5 is played, and white gives up in this position down pretty significantly and is pretty seriously running out of time. So let's jump to the next one. All right, so this is Nakamura against Butcher. So this time, his opponent takes the center, and Nakamura decides to play this, kind of dubious c6 knight out back. Nakamura he likes to play bad in the opening on purpose, just kind of weird, but it works for him, so it's kind of good too. I don't know. So we see Nakamura's only used 10 seconds. He's come up with some ridiculous way to develop his pieces, and it works for him. So takes. Nakamura's down a pawn. Let's see if his opponent keeps the pawn. His opponent doesn't decide to keep the pawn. The way to keep the pawn, knight g5 would have been good, attacking this bishop. So the pawn falls, and now he's not up that much material. So this position is pretty close, except you see Nakamura's up over a minute, so he started putting pressure on his opponent. Here there's an exchange. The queen is attacked, and black has equalized. So the bishop is attacked, the bishop retreats. Both players have the bishop pair and a rook with equal pawns, so it's a pretty drawish position, but that's okay. So pawn up is played. That move is apparently not excellent because of bishop d3 is the best response to it. But I think against this, it still looks like white is doing well here. So bishop's attacked, check, bishop retreats. So now Nakamura is up pretty significantly. What exactly happened? I don't know. Takes. This strategy by white to advance the pawns just wasn't the best strategy. The pawns become more of weaknesses because they can't retreat, and they're not really able to defend themselves. Also, this pawn is on a dark square, and both the bishops are on dark squares, so the pawns are pretty vulnerable on dark squares. So it looks like rook decentralizing the rook was perhaps a mistake. There's some exchanges. The bishop blockades. So that may have been a mistake, but he's still making his own pass pawn. This pawn does look dangerous, but at the same time, this centralized pawn looks dangerous as well. He checks, and that's the end of the game. Sure, makes sense. But, I mean, after king b1, bishop a7 would have had to be played, which is kind of interesting. So, that's how Nakamura wins that one. You see he's up a minute again. So, if you want to play like Nakamura, make sure that you play really fast. Okay, let's breeze through. We're trying to go through all 20 games. So, Nakamura uses this dubious opening again. So, the bishop comes forward, and I think this looks like a decent setup for white, but most of the positions look good for white at first and then end up looking bad later on. So Nakamura hasn't developed many of his pieces, but somehow he doesn't need to because he's Nakamura. So the knight comes forward. Oh, we got to put on crafty. So white's a little bit better, but white isn't supposed to take this pawn because opening up the b file is too dangerous. So the queen does retreat. h5 is played to prevent, a breakthrough. Knight comes to the corner. So the knights are coming forward, and here e6 is a tactic. Looks like it's a pretty damn good move. Just opens up some lines, and he's not really going to be able to take it because it's just going to be too weak of a pawn structure, and his opponent will probably be able to make a breakthrough. So that looks like a good move, but I'm not sure if he sees it. He doesn't see it, and the queen comes all the way out. So now this queen is kind of dangerous, coordinated with these knights, this pawn and this rook. So the king is actually somewhat safe. E6 is played now, but it looks like it might be a move late. F6 can be played this time, and now Nakamura is going for a mating attack. Nakamura is only up a few seconds. He's playing against a FIDE master, and looks like knight h8 is good according to the computer, but we'll see if he plays it. He doesn't decide to play it, but I can't imagine that knight f4 is much better. So knight h8 would have been pretty exciting. It looks like black has 4 pawns worth of initiative for the rook, which is kind of sick. So the knight comes forward, rook comes out, and now he's able to take with the bishop and then move over. But it looks like b3 might be imminent and could be crushing. So b3 is immediately played, but apparently it's not the best move. After takes, bishop takes e6 is the next move. If you take again, then I want to take, but I will probably lose the game. So takes. Assume Nakamura would take back. Oh, and then you take the rook. Because it's not mate. Queen takes, rook takes, check, king over. It's not mate. So he does take. The pawn takes back. Now knight. You see, knight takes h8 is sick here. That's what I just figured out in my commentary. Knight takes h8 is sick because there's not actually a mate in this exact position. But he plays this move, which isn't as good. Takes, check, king over. Now he can take here, but it looks like, I don't know. Well, knight takes e6. What about this? He can take the rook, but there must be some reason why he can't take the rook. So you can see the positions get pretty complicated when Nakamura plays them. They're also completely unique, totally unusual positions, and he plays very, very fast. So it's just interesting to see. He's not using he's not using a strategy that isn't beatable. He's playing the person. He knows he's not playing a computer. And he's able to kind of gamble in the right positions. Like it's almost like he plays a lot of hands. He plays like a loose, aggressive style, and is able to. Oh, so obviously against knight takes h8, there's just a check here with the bishop. After which it's just mate and one, like king over mate. So that's why knight can't take there. So yeah, it's like Nakamura plays. He plays a lot of hands and just tries to get it in good when he can, and plays kind of like a gambler. All right, I'll keep going forward. I really want to tell you guys about the other hands that I lost tonight, but at the same time, I'm pretty sure that you don't care that much because you're a chess player, not a poker player. Sorry, I ran through that kind of fast. It looks like the position is now equalized. That was a little too quick, but we got 20 games to go through, so we might as well do it. You see Nakamura's way up on time. Here's a check. Bishop takes, rook takes. So Nakamura's also good at rook endings and endgames in general, I think, which is really important for his style. Like, I'm not that good at endgames, and that's definitely a major weakness for me, but Nakamura is a top-tier player, and he's able to play rook and pawn endgames. He usually wins them, I think. So this rook decides to retreat. Had maybe a slightly better move, rook a4 possibly, because then you can attack this square. But here's takes on g2, and it looks like black is better in this position, basically because white's pawn structure is weak. He has three weak pawns. It should be easy to pick some of those off. And look how advanced his king is versus his opponent's king. So this king is able to get in a good position. This king is in a pretty weak position. Able to win a pawn, check, and start advancing this pawn. Take down that pawn. And this should be pretty easy. It's a check, after which he's going to queen. So that's the end of that game. Let's jump to the next one. That was against capital G. Sauerkraut.
A game of chess is like a sword fight. You must think first, before you move.